Let's turn to a different topic now altogether. Tom Watson, half the man he was. I'm sure many people have said that in a good way. You've lost how much weight?
I'm up to £96 now.
And in stone, that's about
£2 off 7.
Yeah. Not bad at all. Has it changed the way you feel about yourself?
I don't know, changed the way I feel about myself. I feel far more chilled out, and I feel like brain fog has been lifted from my head. So yeah, I guess I have changed really.
And you've lost it in a somewhat unorthodox way. As a result, you've been thinking a lot about current public health advice and whether it needs revisiting. We'll be talking about that in just a moment. But first, we invited you to make a very personal report exploring your weight loss story.
I've tried to lose weight. I've joined Slimming World. I've joined Weight Watchers. I've counted calories. I've had red days and green days. But none of it has worked in the long run. I'm the 51-year-old deputy leader of the Labour Party. And for 30 years I've been putting on the weight. And I've been getting more and more worried about it. I kept reading biographies of Labour politicians who died early in their 50s and 60s. And I've got young kids and I don't want to die. So having read many research papers, I started on a weight loss journey last August, and I've lost £96 by breaking current public health advice. I cut out sugar, refined sugar in all its forms, and starchy carbohydrates. I increased my intake of leafy greens, and somewhat controversially increased fats in my diet, fats like butter and olive oil, even by putting coffee in a blender in the morning and blending butter to produce a thing called bulletproof coffee. What I thought was just constant hunger was actually sugar craving, and I would now describe myself as a reformed former sugar addict.
My name's Dr. C Malhotra. I am a consultant cardiologist. The way that people eat more fat and lose weight is that actually what fat does, fat itself is very satiating. It keeps you feeling full.
What's your advice to people who are obese or overweight?
I've had to learn over the last 5 to 10 years that our dietary advice, which actually changed in the 1970s in the USA and 1983 in the UK, was actually fatally flawed because it had wrongly demonized saturated fat. And as a result of that advice, we have increased our consumption of starchy foods, sugar, which actually makes up the bulk, the majority of ultra-processed foods. And that, when it comes to the body, has the worst impact on glucose and increases one's risk of developing many chronic conditions, but most importantly type 2 diabetes, which at the moment is the single biggest cost on the NHS.
At the very least, we need to test the notion that the current public health advice on nutrition is accurate. And I think I need to talk to people who think that we're in the right place on the advice that we've been given for the last 20-25 years. I'm walking to the BBC studio to interview the British Nutrition Foundation. It's part of my 10,000 steps a day. When the weight started to come off, I started to increase my physical exercise. Firstly, by trying to do 10,000 steps a day, and I made a rule to myself that I'd walk every set of steps I came to.
My name is Bridget Benelam and I'm Nutrition Communications Manager at the British Nutrition Foundation. Firstly, I'd say to you, congratulations on losing so much weight, which is brilliant, and that approach has obviously worked really well for you. I think certainly when it comes to sugar, we're definitely eating too much, and cutting that down is a great way to start in terms of improving your diet. So one can of sugary drink will take you over the amount of free sugars that you should be having, and it really is key. We're well over our sugar recommendations, and it is key that we bring sugar intakes down.
The government are currently consulting on the level of 10% currently on saturated fats. I mean, presumably that's because there's a sort of debate going on in the country about whether that recommendation is too high or too low.
So the government's recently reviewed all the available evidence around saturated fat and health, and they've supported this existing recommendation to stay at 10% of intake. Now, interestingly, that's remarkably consistent around the world. So that's the same as the World Health Organization and also most other countries. So, for example, the US, Canada, France. Now, that, of course, is out for consultation, and people will feed in their comments, and that will be considered. And so we all have to wait to see what the final report says.
at the very least, if the research exists and it is contradictory or in dispute, it begs the question, should government be giving general advice like this when there is such controversy out there about the level of fats, proteins and carbohydrates we have in our diet? The one thing that unites everyone in this debate about what our nutrition should look like is that we have far too much sugar in our diet. I want a national discussion about what our nutrition should be, what our diet should look like. I'm going to spend more time and explore it further.
There we are. Tom Watson, your personal take on how you lost weight. I suppose we have to say, look, other diets are available. This worked for you. It wouldn't work for everyone. But you're saying focus on sugar. We already do have a tax on sugary drinks. Should that be taken further?
Yeah, well, look, firstly, I want to do the rare thing in politics and praise an opponent, because I happen to think the sugar levy is probably George Osborne's greatest legacy. And I think in years ahead, you will epidemiologically be able to show that he has saved lives by introducing that levy. And I would like to say right now, I think it should be widened to sugary milk drinks and other sort of confectionery products, or that would be appropriate for that. What appalls me, and by the way, Bridget from the British Nutrition Foundation was very brave to say that those sugary drinks would take people over the daily limit, because as part of her organisation there were companies like Coca-Cola, and I was horrified when I looked into it to realise that the recommended daily allowance for sugar in pop is 30 grams. Coke's got 39 grams in it. We are literally selling stuff to our kids that is poisoning them. And when you look at the scale of sugar-related illness, then this is where when I started to read into it more, you know, there are nearly 4 million people in this country with type 2 diabetes. 10% of the NHS budget is taken up treating type 2 diabetes alone. Sugar-related illnesses like cancers, hypertension, and other illnesses are added to that. This is a national crisis that we haven't addressed fully, and I hope we can have a national debate about it.
Well, do you view it in that way? You know, there's been a debate as well about getting youngsters more involved in exercise, you know, schools that make them run a mile before class. You know, shouldn't something like that be compulsory alongside the sorts of measures?
I mean, look, I think Tom's absolutely right. I mean, we have diabetes in my family and with my parents and things of that nature, but Tom is right. You know, we have a crisis when it comes to type 2 diabetes across the generations, but I think there is so much more that needs to happen with awareness raising, nutrition, the value of nutrition. In my household, we have a constant war on sugar. My son is 9 years old, and of course kids are constantly consuming sweets and various other things as well, confectionery. And it is a battle, but we have to do more as parents, as individuals, as households, and actually I think government should do much more in terms of supporting that awareness raising, supporting schools, you know, and giving people the confidence as well to go out there and help them to make the right kind of choices and educate children too.
Simon, brief thought?
But first of all, I think we've got to congratulate Tom. This is a very good example of a good sort of taking back control, actually. But beyond that, I think, you know, I agree that I think there is a role for sensitive and intelligent government intervention in this field. In conversation with business, I think that's important, but also the other side of this is about nudge and behavioural change amongst all of us in the population. It's hugely important.
Well done, Tom, and thanks for talking about it and doing the report. And you know, maybe we'll follow the progress that you make as well.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to spend more time in this policy area over the next 6 to 12 months, so there's more to say. I'll have more to say on it later on.
There certainly will be. More to say on other matters. Jack